lose. Again. You watch the little coins spill across the screen, everywhere gloriously except into your account. And you make a promise, a sacred promise, a promise you fully intend to keep this time. That was the last one. Absolutely the last one. It is not the last one. You know it's not the last one. Your thumb already knows it's not the last one, and honestly, your thumb is in charge now. You tell yourself this is a modern problem, a disease of the digital age. Glowing rectangles and clever little apps, engineered by hoodie-wearing geniuses in glass buildings, all designed to vacuum out your wallet one hopeful tap at a time. But the real answer is far stranger than that. Because the urge that just cost you, it didn't come from your phone. It didn't come from Vegas. It didn't even come from a casino. It came from a sheep. I'm serious. Specifically, it came from the ankle bone of a sheep, tossed onto the dirt floor of a cave roughly 7,000 years ago by an ancestor of yours who was 100%, absolutely no doubt about it, convinced that this next throw, this one right here, was going to be the good one. Spoiler, it was not the good one. Let me introduce you to the astragalus. Now, astragalus sounds like a Greek philosopher. Sounds like a wise old man in a robe who has opinions about the soul. It is not. It's an ankle bone. That's it. Sheep have them. Goats have them. You have them, technically, though. Please leave yours where they are. And here's the thing about this particular bone. It's lumpy. It's got 4 sort of flat sides, and when you throw it, it can land on any one of them. And you cannot possibly know which. 4 outcomes. Total chaos. A tiny, bony, unpredictable little machine. Which means it was only a matter of time. Because humans, it turns out, are physically incapable of finding a random object on the ground without immediately inventing a way to bet on it. Show a human a bone that lands 4 different ways, and within about 11 seconds someone will say, "Bet you it lands on the flat side." And someone else will say, "You're on." And congratulations. You've invented gambling and also the argument that ends the friendship. Archaeologists have dug these little bones up by the thousands. They call them knuckle bones. They turn up everywhere. The ancient Near East, the Mediterranean, Central Asia, everywhere humans gathered. Everywhere humans got bored. And bored is the magic word here. Because gambling didn't need money. It didn't need cards. It didn't need a neon sign or a free drink. It needed exactly 2 things: a bone and 2 people who each secretly believed they were luckier than the other. That's it. That's the whole recipe. And humanity has never, ever run out of the second ingredient. Now, here's where it gets good. Because if you're picturing your ancestors as sweet, innocent, wide-eyed little cave people rolling their bones for wholesome family fun, stop. Delete that image. Right now. Because they cheated. Oh, they cheated. Constantly. Enthusiastically. Shamelessly. In the ancient city of Maresha, in what's now southern Israel, a researcher named Lee Perry Gal and her colleagues dug up a hoard of over 500 of these knuckle bones. 500 in one town! That's not a hobby, that's an epidemic. And when they looked closely, really closely, they found something absolutely magnificent. A lot of these bones had been tampered with. Some were shaved down, filed to land a certain way. And others? Others had been drilled out and filled with molten lead. Little hidden weights poured secretly inside so the bone would tumble exactly how its owner wanted. Let that sink in. Before the wheel had even finished spreading around the planet. Before most of humanity could read a single word. Some guy looked down at a sheep's ankle and thought, and I want you to really hear his voice here. You know what would make this bone even better? Crime. The instinct to load the dice is quite literally as old as dice. We invented fairness and cheating in the same breath. We are a magnificent species. So why? Why does a lumpy little bone, or a spinning wheel, or a flashing screen Reach into the oldest, dampest basement of your brain and simply refuse to let go. For that, we need to talk about your reward system and a scientist named Wolfram Schultz. Schultz spent years studying what actually happens inside the brain when a reward shows up, and he expected the obvious. Treat appears, brain celebrates, party in the neurons. And sure, at first that's exactly what he saw. But then he found something that flips this entire story on its head. Once the brain learned to predict the reward, once it knew the treat was coming, the celebration moved. It stopped firing when the reward arrived and started firing before, at the exact moment of uncertainty, that electric little instant when the outcome is still unknown, still spinning, still tumbling through the air. Read that again because it explains your entire life, your bank account, and possibly your last relationship. Your brain is not thrilled by winning. Your brain is thrilled by not yet knowing. The uncertainty is the drug. The win is just the receipt. That's why the throw always feels better than the result. That's why the spin is more fun than the payout. That's why one more roll is, without competition, the single most expensive sentence in the history of human speech. Your ancestor felt that exact spark, hunched over a dirt floor in the dark, holding his breath, watching a bone wobble to a stop. You feel it staring at a screen at 2 a.m, wondering why you're still awake. Same spark, same bone, slightly better lighting, and nobody took this spark and ran with it like the Romans. Because the Romans didn't just gamble. The Romans made gambling a full-blown, empire-wide, out-of-control civilizational obsession that would make a modern casino floor look like a quiet afternoon at the library. Officially, it was banned. There were laws, stern ones. Dice games were forbidden, yet except during one December festival called Saturnalia. Saturnalia was basically ancient Rome's "the rules are off" holiday, where for a few glorious days everyone was suddenly, legally permitted to lose their shirts. The rest of the year, strictly illegal. In practice, nobody cared at all, even a little. The Romans gambled in taverns, in doorways, in the street, in the stands at the gladiator games where they'd bet on who'd win, how long it'd take, and who'd bleed first. They gambled so constantly, so brazenly, that they invented a workaround you were going to recognize immediately. They started playing with tokens, little markers standing in for real money, so that if the authorities came knocking, well, technically, wink, nobody here is gambling for cash, officer. We're just playing. With our fun little discs, they invented the poker chip as a legal loophole. 2,000 years ago, these people were criminals and I loved them. And then, there were the emperors, the very men who were supposed to enforce these laws, who were instead some of the most gloriously unhinged, degenerate gamblers in the entire human record. Meet Augustus, first emperor of Rome, face carved into the bedrock of Western history, towering marble-jawed symbol of imperial dignity. Also, in his own private letters, he cheerfully admits to losing at dice all the time. And here's the detail that kills me. He describes handing his own dinner guests money, his money, so they'd keep playing with him. He wasn't even trying to win. He just could not physically stop. He was bankrolling his own addiction and calling it hospitality. But the true champion, the patron saint of everyone who has ever whispered, "Okay, last one," is the Emperor Claudius. Claudius didn't like dice. Liking is for amateurs. Claudius loved dice with a passion that frankly should have had a doctor involved. He once reportedly bet 400,000 sesterces on a single roll. A single throw? That's an amount of money that could have fed an entire town for ages. Gone. In the time it takes a bone to bounce twice. And he simply could not bear to be away from the game. So he had a special dice board built directly into his carriage. Into his carriage! So he could gamble while traveling. This man could not ride across town without rolling dice. Somewhere out there's a Roman driver going, "Sir, we've arrived." And Claudius going, "One more lap, I'm almost even." He also wrote a book, an entire book, on the art of playing dice. An emperor sat down and wrote a gambling manual. And in the single most poetic twist in this entire story, that book is now completely lost to history, which is either a genuine tragedy or the most perfectly fitting ending imaginable for a gambler's life's work. He bet on everything, and history kept the receipts for none of it. There's even a Roman satire that imagines Claudius in the afterlife. His eternal punishment? He's condemned forever to shake dice in a cup with a hole in the bottom. So the dice spill out every single time before they ever land, forever reaching for a roll that never quite comes. His personal hell wasn't fire, it wasn't demons, it was almost winning. And you know that hell, you've been to that hell. That hell has a spin button and a little sound effect. So step back. Look at the whole ridiculous, glorious sweep of it. 7,000 years ago, a bone on a cave floor in the dark. 2,000 years ago, an emperor bankrupting himself in a moving carriage, writing a book nobody kept. And today, a glowing rectangle in your palm, humming along on the exact same ancient wiring. Except now it's fine-tuned by people who understand your reward system better than you understand yourself. Nothing fundamental has changed. Nothing. The technology got sleeker. The bone got smarter. The lead weights became algorithms, but that spark, that tiny electric jolt of not yet knowing, is the identical spark that has been dragging human beings toward the edge of ruin since before we could even write down what happened to us. The casinos didn't invent this. Your phone didn't invent this. They just went digging around in the oldest part of your mind, found the most ancient lever in there, blew off the dust, and learned exactly how to pull it. So the next time you feel that pull and that soft little whisper of one more, pause. Just for a second, and recognize it for what it truly, actually is. Not a modern weakness, not some personal flaw you should be ashamed of. Just a very old bone, tumbling through the air, in the dark, 7,000 years ago, and a stubborn little part of your brain that has been leaning forward, holding its breath, waiting to see how it lands. Ever since. You lose. Again. But this time, at least you know exactly who taught you how.